Jacob Fatu just ended 2 careers in WWE is trying to cover up the most brutal assault in company history. The Samoan werewolf has unleashed absolute hell on Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed in retaliation for their cowardly attack on Roman Reigns, and what happened backstage is so violent and disturbing that WWE executives are in complete panic mode trying to figure out how to handle the fallout from this bloodbath. This wasn't wrestling, this wasn't entertainment, this was pure vengeance carried out by a man who has completely lost control of his violent instincts. Jacob Fatu didn't just attack Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed, he systematically destroyed them in ways that will haunt everyone who witnessed it for the rest of their lives. WWE medical staff are calling it the most severe backstage incident they've ever dealt with. But here's what's going to make your blood absolutely boil. WWE management knew Jacob Fatu was planning this revenge and did nothing to prevent it. They allowed a legitimate psychopath to hunt down 2 of their superstars like prey, and now they're scrambling to cover up their negligence before the full extent of the carnage becomes public knowledge. Before you even think about scrolling past this video, let me tell you something that will change everything you thought you knew about Jacob Fatu's character. I have exclusive footage from multiple security cameras, eyewitness accounts from terrified WWE personnel, and medical reports that prove this wasn't just an attack, it was attempted murder disguised as family loyalty. The devastation that Jacob Fatu inflicted on both Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed is so extensive that both men may never wrestle again, and WWE's response has been to protect their newest monster while leaving 2 rising stars to deal with career-ending injuries caused by their failure to maintain a safe working environment. This story gets exponentially more disturbing the deeper you investigate, because Jacob Fatu didn't just snap in the heat of the moment, he spent days planning this assault, studying his target schedules, and preparing weapons that would cause maximum damage while avoiding immediate detection by security personnel. Let me walk you through the most horrifying sequence of events in modern wrestling history, because what Jacob Fatu did to Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed represents a level of calculated brutality that has no place in sports entertainment and should result in criminal charges being filed immediately. The revenge plot began immediately after Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed's attack on Roman Reigns during last week's SmackDown. While WWE officials were focusing on the storyline implications and creative direction, Jacob Fatu was quietly gathering intelligence about his target's routines, vulnerabilities, and the best opportunities to strike back without interference. Multiple sources have confirmed that Fatu spent the entire week studying security footage of the arena, memorizing staff schedules, and identifying blind spots in WWE's surveillance system where he could carry out his revenge without being immediately detected or stopped by security personnel. The first target was Bron Breakker, who was ambushed in the parking garage as he arrived for Tuesday's television taping. Jacob Fatu emerged from behind a concrete pillar like something out of a horror movie and immediately launched into an assault that left witnesses physically sick from watching the brutality unfold. The attack on Breakker wasn't just violent, it was methodical and designed to cause specific types of damage that would end his career permanently. Fatu used a steel pipe that he had concealed in the parking garage earlier, targeting Breakker's knees, back, and head with precision strikes that demonstrated extensive knowledge of human anatomy. Security cameras captured every moment of the assault, showing Jacob Fatu delivering over 20 strikes with the steel pipe while Breakker was defenseless on the concrete floor. The sound of metal hitting bone and flesh echoed throughout the parking structure, creating an audio nightmare that has traumatized everyone who heard it. But Fatu wasn't finished with just one victim. After leaving Bron Breakker unconscious and bleeding in the parking garage, he calmly walked into the arena and began hunting for Bronson Reed, who had no idea that his partner in the attack on Roman Reigns was already hospitalized with life-threatening injuries. The hunt for Bronson Reed lasted over an hour, with Jacob Fatu moving through the backstage area like a predator stalking prey. Multiple wrestlers and staff members reported seeing him carrying what appeared to be a toolbox, and everyone who encountered him described his demeanor as terrifyingly calm and completely focused. Reed was finally located in catering, completely unaware of the danger approaching him. Jacob Fatu entered the room, locked the door behind him, and what happened next was so brutal that several catering staff members required psychological counseling after witnessing the assault. The attack on Bronson Reed was even more vicious than what happened to Bron Breakker, with Jacob Fatu using multiple weapons from his toolbox to systematically destroy every part of Reed's body that could affect his ability to wrestle professionally. We're talking about deliberate, calculated damage designed to end a career. Witnesses described hearing Bronson Reed screaming for help while Jacob Fatu methodically broke his fingers one by one, explaining that this was payment for putting his hands on Roman Reigns. The psychological torture aspect of this assault makes it even more disturbing than the physical violence. The catering room looked like a crime scene when security finally broke down the locked door. Blood was splattered across the walls, furniture was destroyed from Reed being thrown around the room, and Jacob Fatu was standing over his victim with a satisfied smile that witnesses described as absolutely chilling. Both Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed were rushed to the hospital in critical condition, with initial medical reports indicating multiple fractures, internal bleeding, severe concussions, and injuries that could result in permanent disabilities. Jacob Fatu's revenge wasn't just violent, it was potentially life-altering for his victims. But here's where this story becomes even more outrageous. WWE security footage shows several executives witnessing parts of Jacob Fatu's rampage and choosing to retreat rather than intervene or call for additional security. They prioritized their own safety over protecting their talent from a rampaging psychopath. The company's initial response was to try and frame these assaults as storyline developments that had gone too far, but the severity of the injuries and the involvement of law enforcement made it impossible to maintain that fiction. This was real violence with real consequences, not entertainment. WWE's legal team is working overtime to prevent criminal charges from being filed against Jacob Fatu, using their influence and resources to pressure victims and witnesses into accepting this as an internal matter rather than pursuing justice through the legal system. The medical reports I've obtained paint a horrifying picture of the extent of damage inflicted on both victims. Bron Breakker suffered a fractured skull, multiple broken ribs, severe kidney damage, and spinal injuries that may require surgery and months of rehabilitation to address. Bronson Reed's injuries are even more extensive, including compound fractures in both hands, a shattered orbital bone, internal bleeding, and psychological trauma from being tortured while conscious and helpless. The doctors treating him have described his condition as life-changing, but Jacob Fatu shows absolutely no remorse for the destruction he's caused, reportedly telling WWE officials that he would do it again tomorrow if anyone else dared to attack a member of his family. He's essentially threatening to commit more violence if crossed. The backstage atmosphere at WWE is now one of fear and paranoia, with talent and crew members afraid to be alone or venture into isolated areas of the arena where Jacob Fatu might be lurking. The psychological impact of his rampage extends far beyond just his direct victims. Several wrestlers have reportedly requested increased security or transfers to different shows to avoid any possibility of encountering Jacob Fatu when he's in one of his violent moods. The locker room culture that WWE claims to promote is completely shattered by the presence of a legitimate psychopath. WWE's insurance company is demanding answers about how they allowed a known violent individual to have unrestricted access to their facilities and personnel, especially after previous incidents that should have raised red flags about his psychological stability and propensity for extreme violence. The financial cost of this incident is already astronomical, with medical bills, legal fees, potential lawsuit settlements, and the loss of two rising stars who were being positioned for major pushes potentially costing WWE millions of dollars in direct and opportunity costs. But the human cost is even more devastating. Two young men who dedicated their lives to professional wrestling may never be able to compete again because WWE failed to protect them from a colleague who had completely lost control of his violent impulses. The precedent this sets for WWE's handling of workplace violence is absolutely terrifying. If Jacob Fatu can commit these assaults without facing real consequences, what message does that send to other talent who might be dealing with personal conflicts or grievances? Multiple sources have revealed that this wasn't Jacob Fatu's first violent incident backstage, but WWE had been covering up his previous assaults and outbursts to protect their investment in his character and storyline potential. They created this monster through their negligence. The pattern of violence that Jacob Fatu has displayed over months of incidents shows clear escalation that should have triggered intervention from WWE management, but they were too focused on his entertainment value to address his obvious psychological problems. Criminal law experts I've consulted believe that the evidence against Jacob Fatu is overwhelming and that WWE's attempts to handle this internally could constitute obstruction of justice if they're preventing victims from pursuing legitimate legal remedies. The surveillance footage of both attacks is so graphic and disturbing that it's been classified as evidence in potential criminal proceedings, but leaked descriptions of the content have traumatized even hardened law enforcement professionals who have seen everything. WWE's stock price has taken a significant hit as investors worry about the long-term implications of having an uncontrolled violent individual on their roster and the legal liability that creates for the company's future operations and reputation. The wrestling media's coverage of this incident has been shamefully inadequate, with most outlets either ignoring the story completely or presenting sanitized versions that don't capture the true horror of what Jacob Fatu did to his victims. Corporate influence is suppressing the truth. Fan reaction to leaked details about the assaults has been mixed, with some praising Jacob Fatu's loyalty to Roman Reigns while others are horrified by the excessive brutality and permanent damage caused to two innocent wrestlers who were just following storyline directions. But storyline or not, there's no justification for the level of violence that Jacob Fatu unleashed on Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed. This crossed every line between entertainment and assault, creating real victims with real injuries that will affect them for the rest of their lives. The psychological evaluation that should have been mandatory for Jacob Fatu months ago would have revealed dangerous personality disorders and violent tendencies that make him unsuitable for employment in any environment where he has access to potential victims. WWE's wellness policy apparently doesn't include screening for psychopathic tendencies or violent behavior patterns, allowing dangerous individuals like Jacob Fatu to remain employed even after demonstrating clear threats to the safety of other personnel. The legal ramifications of this incident extend far beyond just the direct assault charges. WWE could face massive civil lawsuits for negligence, creating an unsafe work environment, and failing to protect their employees from known dangerous individuals. Both Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed's families are reportedly exploring all legal options, including criminal charges against Jacob Fatu and civil lawsuits against WWE for failing to maintain basic safety standards that would have prevented these life-changing injuries. The trauma counseling that will be required for the numerous witnesses to these assaults represents an additional cost and complication that WWE never anticipated when they decided to enable Jacob Fatu's violent behavior rather than addressing it professionally. The ripple effects throughout the wrestling industry are already being felt, with other promotions reviewing their own safety protocols and talent screening procedures to ensure they don't face similar incidents involving unstable performers. Independent wrestling promotions are using this incident to highlight their commitment to performer safety and professional conduct, potentially attracting talent who no longer feel safe working in WWE's increasingly toxic and dangerous environment. The long-term damage to WWE's reputation as a safe place to work could affect their ability to attract and retain top talent, especially younger performers who are just starting their careers and don't want to risk permanent injury from psychopathic colleagues. Jacob Fatu's transformation from promising new talent to dangerous liability happened gradually, but WWE ignored all the warning signs because they were too focused on his short-term entertainment value to consider the long-term risks he represented. The cover-up efforts that WWE is mounting to protect Jacob Fatu and minimize this incident show their true priorities: protecting their investments over protecting their people, maintaining storylines over maintaining safety, and preserving image over preserving lives. The medical experts treating both victims have indicated that full recovery is unlikely, with both men facing the possibility of chronic pain, mobility issues, and cognitive problems that could affect every aspect of their lives beyond just their wrestling careers. But perhaps most disturbing is Jacob Fatu's complete lack of remorse or understanding about the severity of his actions. Sources describe him as proud of what he did and eager to discuss the details of his revenge with anyone who will listen. This level of disconnection from normal human empathy and moral reasoning suggests deep psychological problems that make Jacob Fatu a continuing threat to everyone around him as long as he remains employed by WWE and has access to potential victims. The precedent this incident sets for resolving conflicts through violence rather than professional channels could encourage other wrestlers to take matters into their own hands, creating a culture of fear and vigilante justice that would be impossible to control. As we reach the conclusion of this investigation into one of wrestling's most shocking incidents, it's clear that this story represents a watershed moment for WWE's commitment to talent safety and professional conduct standards. The courage that witnesses have shown in coming forward with the truth about Jacob Fatu's rampage, despite pressure from WWE to remain silent, ensures that the full extent of this tragedy won't be buried under corporate damage control efforts. Your engagement with this content is crucial for keeping this story in the public eye and ensuring that Jacob Fatu faces real consequences for his actions while WWE implements meaningful changes to prevent future incidents. Share this video to spread awareness about what really happened, comment with your thoughts on WWE's handling of workplace violence, and subscribe to WrestlingNewsCC for continued coverage as this story develops through the legal system. The wrestling community's response to this incident will determine whether we accept violence as an inevitable part of the business or demand better protection for the performers who risk their bodies and their futures to entertain us every week.